What's going on, guys? It is me, Tyson Trainer, back for another episode of Sports Talk, and today we're going to be talking about rates of weight gain. For those of you who listen to this, obviously we've talked about losing weight and things like that before, but if you're an athlete who's looking to put on a little bit of muscle mass, I know I've covered this a little bit, but one thing I want to really reiterate to people is the amount of rates of gain you should be aiming for, because I think a lot of people get they kind of look at like, oh well, if I can meet a 500 calorie deficit a day, and that's 3,500 calories, and I lose half a kilo, if I was to gain muscle, why don't I just do the same thing? And unfortunately, as much as I would wish it would work like that, it doesn't. And there's only so much muscle we can gain in a certain period of time. And a lot of those things, there are different factors that come down to how much muscle we can gain. So it's like, how long have you been training for? What are your genetics like? If you're someone who's an athlete, listen to this, your genetics may be a little bit higher than most people. Are you a male or a female? Are you on substances, as in are you an enhanced athlete or not athlete? And all those things come into account. But if we would kind of, mix all this up together to a degree and come out with some just general overall recommendations, ideally what you want to be looking for yourself is to gain between 0.25 to 0.5% of your body weight a week. All right. Now, if you're someone who's 70 kilos and we're thinking about this and we're like 0.25, a quarter of my body weight, that's like 125 grams a week. Sorry, 175 grams a week. It's like, that's not much at all. And no, it's definitely not, right? Or we go all the way up to 350 grams. And again, that's not a lot of gaining per week. However, if our goal is to gain predominantly muscle mass, if our goal is to avoid gaining body fat, if our goal is to make a muscle gain phase as successful as possible and avoid having to diet hard afterwards, then you should be aiming for a slower rate of weight loss. Now, the reason, again, there's only so much muscle we can gain in a period of time is because muscle takes time to build. We need to give the body a stimulus from weight training, right? So we have to break down the muscle, give it the nutrients it needs to recover, and that doesn't just come from, all right, I trained today, I'm going to eat some extra food, I'm going to gain muscle. Gaining muscle does actually take a fair bit of work for us to do, because the body finds its place of homeostasis. There's no reason for it to actually want to gain any extra muscle. There's no biological reason for it. So, our ancestors weren't walking around jacked as fuck because our goal was to survive back then. And survival meant, feasting when you could and then living through the famine. But we don't have feast and famine anymore. And so with that, we can try and prioritize gaining more muscle mass, which comes from training, but also not doing it too fast, because the body would rather gain body fat, because again, it's still kind of in a way in prehistoric times where it thinks, okay, we might not have food coming in tomorrow. We need to store this extra food as body fat just in case something happens. And again, because we still have that ancestral primate brain, and that's what subconsciously the brain would think, or the way the body acts, That's also why we adapt. So metabolic adaptation, if you guys have heard of that before, when we're dieting a certain period of time, our body will adapt and try and burn less calories over time because we're a lighter individual, firstly. Secondly, it'll try and conserve energy because it doesn't want you to lose body fat. Because again, what if there's a famine coming around the corner? If our bodies weren't thinking about that side of things, the famine, we wouldn't metabolically adapt. And the body would be like, if we wanted to get rid of body fat and our body was good at it, it would actually help us lose body fat. It wouldn't try and hinder us losing body fat. It would actually decrease our hunger so we can go for days and weeks on end without having to eat. But unfortunately, our body doesn't do that. So looking back at the muscle gain side of things, 0.25 to 0.5% of our body weight a week. Again, not a huge amount, but if we do it consistently, if it is slow, if it is more towards the lower end, you just have a higher chance of gaining muscle mass. Now, if you want the best chances of gaining muscle mass, there's a few things you want to do. Firstly, you want to make sure you're getting 2 grams per kilogram of protein every single day, okay? Obviously, we need protein for muscle building, for muscle recovery, a few other things. However, protein is not our most important building block, which is why we only need about 2 grams per kilogram a day, all right? Because our anabolic gains are going to come primarily from the extra carbohydrates we ingest, because carbohydrates will spike insulin will push nutrients into the muscle and help you recover. Carbohydrates will help you be able to push your intensity in the gym. If you can push harder in the gym, you're then able to push more weight, more reps, whatever it's going to be. That in turn is going to stimulate or break down more muscle and then stimulate muscle protein synthesis, or just, again, give that body a reason to be able to recover and grow more because you're able to push harder. And again, like carbohydrates in itself are the building blocks of not the building blocks of muscle, but they are an anabolic response to help you build muscle, which is why we want to prioritize carbohydrates as our extra calories. So once we account like 1 gram per kilogram of body weight for fat and 2 grams per kilogram of body weight for protein, we want the rest of our food coming from carbohydrates, the rest of our calories. And whenever we go to increase calories to keep progressing going up, we want to make sure that those calories are going to come from carbohydrates, again, to keep pushing that muscle protein synthesis, to keep pushing that nutrients into the body. Sorry, I shouldn't have said muscle protein synthesis. That's protein, obviously. But obviously just to help us create more muscle mass. And then with this, you want to be in a surplus daily, okay? To gain muscle, we do not give our body 1 day of a reason to gain muscle. We want to be in a surplus daily. And if we're not in a surplus daily and we save our calories for the weekend or we do any of those things, then you're not going to get the results you want, because think about this. You have 7 days to give your body a reason to grow, or you give your body 2 days a reason to grow, all right? If you give your body a reason to grow every single day with the extra calories and the extra protein and the extra nutrients, it's going to grow. If you don't give your body that, and you're only giving it 2 days of the week, even if it's going to be extra calories in those 2 days, you're not going to get the best result. And that's why we want to constantly be in a calorie surplus. And if you gain a little bit faster, it's okay. Like, if you overeat a little bit on 1 day, we don't try and undereat the next day. We try and consistently keep in that surplus to keep gaining muscle mass, right? So with that being said, if we were to start off, you would know your baseline maintenance calories. From there, you would want to start with a 10% calorie increase. 10% is going to be based off your calories, all right? That way, everyone's going to be different based on what our calories are going to be. My calories are going to be different to yours based on my weight, my activity, all those type of things. And so when we do a 10% increase, it's very personalized, and then we can look at how the body responds to that. Are you going to start gaining? Do you jump up a little bit, and do you stop? Like, where do we go from there? And this is why we use those first 2 weeks, just kind of like the first 2 weeks of a gaining phase is just guessing, watching what the body does. So taking measurements, taking your weight, taking your photos. After 2 weeks of a calorie increase of 10%, you can then see, has my weight gone up? Have my measurements gone up? Is my weight continuing to go up, or has it plateaued and not moved? Because with this 10% increase, some people, they're NEAT, they're non-exercise activity thermogenesis, so tapping, fidgeting, walking around, doing their steps. People's NEATs may increase without them actually knowing. That's one thing. Secondly, we may become more inefficient with food, so we may just have more fecal matter, or more shit coming out of us overall because the body won't absorb it all. Some of us, a 10% increase will be perfect amount that we need to gain straight away, because everyone's going to be different, but we need those 2 weeks to be able to decide, are you in a surplus and is it going up? If after 2 weeks measurements haven't changed, or they've been quite stagnant and weight kind of jumped up the first few days but then it stayed stagnant, from there you can make a 5% calorie increase, all right? If you are someone who's seeing your weight slightly ticking up each week over those first 2 weeks and your measurements have slowly started to change, well then guess what? You're in a good place. So then after that 2 week mark, then we know what we can be doing from there. So whether we need to adjust calories by another 5% increase, or whether we need to stick to our calories that we're on at the moment, and we keep riding that gaining wave. And then from there, we continually see our progress through. And ideally, you should be doing this for 3 to 4 months. Now, obviously your sport's going to come into play with this and a whole bunch of other things, but the longer you can do this, the higher the chance you have of gaining muscle mass, all right? Which is why I recommend for people who are going to be going into a gaining phase, at least 4 months, because again, muscle takes time to build. It's not over a day or a week or a month. It does take months to build, which is why slow and low is the way to grow, basically. Okay, so that's just your little update about how you guys can start focusing on gaining phase if it is something you want to do as an athlete to put a little bit more muscle on your body. If you guys have any questions, as always, you know where to find me on Instagram at Tyson Trainer with 2 R's. And until next time, speak to you guys then.